You know what I might have done? I might have actually misdated this video. It's supposed to be December 8th. Oops. Anyway, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, boys and girls. How are we doing today? Excellent. Oh, well, such is life, isn't it? Ah, well. You will simply have to get used to it. You're welcome. Do you not like the fact that I use standard Arial font? I love it. Anyway, okay. So today we're going to talk about helicopter physics because obviously or I try to, but then our video game corporation, or I don't know what they're calling themselves these days, but anyway, the corporation that used to be fully dedicated towards engaging with video games on Muses' stream, that corporation is a God in Our Way original. But we will do it now, right? Okay, so no, it's a helicopter. God, look at it. It's a helicopter. You see that? That's the body. You go up, and those are the top rotors. You go to the tail. This is the side rotor. You remember this? Come on. Anyway, so I wanted to talk about this before we. Oh, fuck's sake. Okay. I need to take this off. Fantastic. Okay. So, uh, I wanted to talk about this before we got started. This is talking about something called the we. I say we. No, that is generally called a free body diagram, right? And so we're going to talk about that real quick. Essentially, what we're saying is when in physics, when we approximate things, we are always approximating things as sort of a unit point in the middle where the center of gravity is. For our discussions, this is fine. When you get into things like aerodynamics, when you get into all sorts of other things, then it is not, right? So for our discussion, this is the side view of a helicopter. Down is downwards, and it will be, in our case, be represented by something like this. And here I am drawing an arrow upwards because this is the direction that the force is going, right? So when the helicopter is completely horizontal and the rotors are completely horizontal, you can see that the force is going that way, right? So let me group this. Let's here, label it. Let's set this to idle. Fantastic. And here we call a helicopter free body diagram. There we go. So now what happens when... What do you mean? Okay, what do you mean you don't get it? Okay. Okay, no, I understand. I understand the confusion. Okay. This is not the actual helicopter scene from far away. Yes, I don't know why anyone would think that, but somebody did, so we're going to have to explain this. All this is a approximation of us saying this is the helicopter. Like, it's like this helicopter has some sort of center of gravity, and obviously the vast majority of its center of gravity will be here. So if you look on a helicopter, this is not directly in the center. It's probably somewhere over here. And that's sitting above the center of gravity. And the way we calculate center of gravity is we essentially do an average, right? We find where the average weight of the helicopter is, such that at that point, everything to the left weighs about as much as everything to the right. And that means when you go straight up, it's going to sort of pivot on along that point, and so that's where we put this. But for the purposes of our discussion, it doesn't really matter. Those aren't those we get into fiddly details that aren't actually really important for us to discuss how this works. So that's why I'm gonna ignore it for now. Cool? Cool. Yeah. So essentially when this top rotor is spinning, it generates a force that pulls the helicopter upwards, right? I think everyone will understand that. Well, let me put down here. So when the helicopter is going upwards, I think it's very clear. It rotates and therefore pushes air downwards, and as it pushes air downwards, the Newton's third law comes into effect, where the air that's being pushed downwards by the rotating blades is pushing upwards on the helicopter. So the more air that you push downwards, the more energy you get pushing you back up, right? Force, etc., etc. Yes, and so this is, we also call it so this is a force. Let's call it D, and then force pulling up, right? And so when rotors are pulling the helicopter straight upwards, when the helicopter is in this planar state, then it makes perfect sense. The helicopter can only go upwards. We're getting to it. Relax, relax, relax. So let me put this here. Let me. Oh. Fantastic. So, why did I get straight into it? Well, I mean, didn't. I got straight into it because we don't have a lot of time. We're supposed to only be doing 20 minutes worth of these things, so obviously I need to get through all of that what we have to talk about, right? Yeah, okay. I'm not gonna comment. No, current events are fun, are exciting, but like I've already said that I will throw up if we talk more about it, so I'm not going to talk any more about this subject. No, I don't care. Anyway, I am now going to simply move it on. Oh, actually, let me take this as well, and we're gonna put here, take both of these, and we're going to tilt it by about that much, right? So when you guys see a helicopter moving, obviously, it always looks like the helicopter is tilted in the forward direction, right? I think that is fairly easy to understand, and the way that works. Okay. The arrow signifies the force of the top rotors of the helicopter, right? So if it's spinning, there's a force that's pushing that's pulling there's a force upwards on the whole body of the helicopter, and that's moving it upwards. Does that? I don't know how I can be any more clear about that. And so that's why the arrow is pointing upwards, right? Whereas this is the arrow pointing downwards to signify that gravity is going on. Right, so this arrow has to point towards upwards, and you can assume that there's another little arrow down here that's gravity, right? And so if those arrows are the same size, then obviously the helicopter is going nowhere. But if the upward arrow is larger, i.e., the net force vertically upwards is higher than the force of gravity, which is 9.8 whatever, depending on how far you are from the center of the Earth. if the force of gravity is less than the force that's pulling the helicopter upwards, it will go upwards. So what I'm showing here is a visual representation of the net force, and it doesn't actually matter how much this is, so long as this is larger than the force that's pulling the helicopter towards the center of the Earth. Make sense? Excellent. Okay. Okay. So now you saw me sort of tilt everything forwards, the helicopter, the arrows, and here is where the key thing explanation, at least for me, happens. It is when we are able to do this. So this can be, let's say let's make that a little bit less. This force can be divided into two forces. Take one that goes up to here. Oh, blue. Yeah, let's do blue. Okay. And so there's a blue component of this force, and this is actually all just physics at play now. Excuse me. Okay, this is all just physics at play, so don't worry about this. And so this is the force that's pulling the helicopter upwards, right? You can see this, and then at so this angled force can be divided into these two. Where is it? There. Like that one, that, and hopefully this means that the program will. No? Why won't you allow me to? Now we can do to this side. So that's what you do in CAD as well. So occasionally you will draw yourself a supporting line just because it's easier than trying to guess it. So do that there, there. Fantastic. Right? So this gray force that we have is now separated into two separate forces. And obviously exactly, it's got different components, right? And you can kind of see why that is, because as the helicopter is tilting forwards, it is pushing some of the air towards the right, which means the helicopter itself is moving towards the left. And by how much is it pushing towards the left, we can, and we do in physics, use these force vectors to find that out. Like it's actually, this is how nature works. Like there are no arrows in nature. There are no arrows in nature. I can't believe I have to point this out. 13, what is it? 1330. 30. This is how nature works. There are no arrows in nature. Right? There are no arrows in nature because there doesn't need to be any arrows in nature. And if we put this up here, you can see exactly how this gray force is a representation of this vertical force plus that horizontal force. Does that kind of make sense? Right? So this is the physics diagram. It's sort of, this is the best way for me to understand. But from an intuitive sense, I think if we take a look at this, we can kind of see. Let me take these two now. I'll take this, that. We'll copy it over here, and then we'll flip it downwards and flip it like that. Oh, let's superimpose it on here, and let me just turn this. I want this capacity to go down. Right? Say 30%. Fantastic. Okay. So I hope it kind of makes sense that the helicopter, as it's spinning, it's pushing air towards the right and it's pushing air downwards, right? And so because it's doing that, the reactionary force of the air on the helicopter is this. Okay. Let me choose two different. Let's set these to black. Okay. No, let's set these to gray. No, not gray. Let's set these to how about that? Okay, that's a good point. Let's do that. Let's do this. But instead of that, we will do. Here we will do dark blue. And this is just a way to show that essentially the way that the rotors are, right? Like it Newton's third law, come on. For every force there's an equal and opposite force. Equal in whatever force. Equal in magnitude but opposite in direction. And if we put this here, I think everyone will simply be able to see that they technically cancel each other out completely, but it is because they cancel each other out completely that the helicopter moves in that direction. And there. Okay, maybe I shouldn't have brought in Newton's third law into this because now I see a whole bunch of confused questions. Okay, we will. Newton's third is one of those that makes no sense until you actually spend time to think about it. Newton's third law. Okay. Opposite and equal reaction. So let's talk about Newton's third law. Let me see how best I can describe it. So let me just draw this. Oh, it'll be the ground, and then we'll put a box on the ground. Let's make this box a nice pale pink. And then let's draw Muses, okay? Let's draw Muses. I don't want to be pink. Can it be blue? Fantastic. Okay. Okay. Okay, hold on. Okay. Okay, maybe my next VTuber avatar will be this. How about that? Huh? Muses. Right, so this will be a sort of let's call this a non-rigorous intuitive understanding of what happens. Say if Muses pushes on a box. Let me note this down. What time are we? 19 minutes. Ooh, we're already at 19 minutes. Okay. So say Muses pushes on a box, right? The box, like my hands against the box, feel the shape, the texture of the box. Does that kind of make sense? And the box, you can imagine like from a, if I'm just standing there, if I'm just standing there and I'm pushing against the box, the box has, you can imagine it as the box pushing on me, because there is no difference between, right? Like say I'm just standing there with my hair, with my arms stretched out, and the box is sliding towards me, or I'm sliding towards the box, and when we finally make contact, the box and I stop, right? And that means, well, nobody's moving, whatever. Um, but the force of the box on me must be the same as the force of me on the box. Otherwise, one of us would be moving in or if the box force of the box is greater on me than my force on the box, then let me reverse that. If my force on the box is greater than what the box is on me, then I would be punching a hole through the box. Does that kind of make sense? Yeah, yeah. And so how do I make it move? The actual movement is actually not the difference between my force on the box and the box on me, but rather the difference between my force on the box and the force of friction between the box and the ground. Right? Which is why in space, astronauts can poke really, really heavy things away from them with a finger. Right? Like like the push it away, but it still takes them disproportionately more energy to accelerate it, but they can push it away no problem, right? But if there's something really, really heavy, like for example, if an astronaut tried to push against the International Space Station, then they're more likely to push themselves away from the surface of the International Space Station. But that doesn't mean the ISS hasn't moved. It just means that the ISS is so disproportionately heavy that it's accelerate. Oh, I need to add this in. First, Newton's first law. I can't even remember. Is that Newton's second law? Oh, right. Newton's first law is inertia. Sorry, second law is F equals ma, right? Yes. Well, okay. So first law and the second law really talk about exactly the same thing, which is if you do not exert a force on an object, it will continue to move in the direction that it's going. On Earth, there are lots of forces, right? There's friction force from the air, there's the gravity pulling something down. But in space, if you are far away enough from gravity wells in space, then you do not have that issue. You can throw a ball and it will continue to go in the direction that you throw it forevermore until it hits something or gets caught in the gravity. Which is why I always have issue with space battles in science fiction, right? Like in science fiction, space battles are all about like swerving and accelerating towards the enemy and all of that. But that's not really how space battles would work, because once you have accelerated, you are moving towards the enemy, and like you would use so much force to break to stop the movement of something heavy like a battleship, right? So like I'm of the opinion that space battles, if they were to occur with not direct energy weaponry, that's a whole other issue. If they were to occur with missiles or anything like that, would essentially be gigantic jousting matches, right? Like people would accelerate towards each other, unleash whatever they have, and then like move past the enemy fleet, turn around, and do the same thing again. So but that's sort of very we have gotten away from the topic at hand. So F equals ma, and actually, we're almost out of time, and I don't really have time to talk about this. But essentially, I'll finish Newton's third law and then we'll talk about the rest in the future. Okay. The way, if I want to push the box, then the force I have on the box and the box on me must be the same, but the force of me on but the force that I exert against the box has to be greater than the force of friction that the box exerts that the box exerts on the ground, which is there. I'm making this more complicated than it probably needs to be. Well, I mean that is what I do, right? Like I make things more complicated. That is what you guys always say. So let me flip that around, put that over here. And so if the box is not moving, then the let's see here, friction. And friction actually is a function of the box, right? Because it's about the weight of the box on the ground. And I'm sure you guys know this. Intuitively, a heavier box is harder to move than a lighter box, and that's because the heavier the box is, the more gravity is pulling it against the ground. And if gravity is pulling it against the ground, then the interface between the box and the ground, i.e., this part right here, makes it more difficult to move. And so, for a heavier box, you will have greater friction. And so if these two are equal, then nothing moves. I think that's fairly self-explanatory. This here. Let's reduce the force of friction a little bit. Yes, exactly. The force backwards is not the force of the box on me. Right? The force of the box on me, and this is why I occasionally take issue with Newton's laws, because really when we're talking about the first law and the second law, it is almost like we're talking about just one single body with one single system. But Newton's third law is really about two separate systems, right? Like we would have to. Okay, hold on. So this is what the box looks like. I just thought of a better way of looking at this. Box. Right? And this is what Muses actually looks like. So this is the Muses system. And then this is the... Am I making any amount of sense? Is anyone understanding what I'm saying? Well, no, I know some of our I know our year one students probably understand this. Do our year 2 and 3 students understand what I'm saying? Oh, I am so sorry. I'm not actually sorry, no. Right. Okay. So how do I explain this? If I'm pushing against the box and I'm not moving, then this is what Muses looks like, right? Like Muses is standing in the middle. Friction is keeping me from is pushing. The box is pushing against me, and then friction is moving. And my arms obviously are pushing me in the direction of the box. And from the perspective of the box, friction is trying to stop the box from moving, and Muses is trying to get the box to move in towards the right. Does that kind of make sense? Right? And so this is what we mean by Newton's third law. Let me just... And this is what Newton's third law means. Let me do this. I will try to connect this to this. Wrong button. that, and then this line, let's do it like that. And this is Newton's third law. Essentially, it means that as I am pushing against the box, trying to get it to move, the box is pushing back at me with the exact same amount of force. Right? So right now I'm the box is not moving because obviously the friction is the same. But if in this particular case, no, I need to send this all the way to back first. If in this particular in this particular case it's longer, it's also going to be longer on this side, but that's okay. That's okay. Because okay, no. Let's just end it here, okay? Let's just end it here. We are at 30. Hold on. Let me write down that quote. What time are we at? We're at 30, 31, 30. Muses takes great joy in destroying what teachers have taught by, what was that? Invalidating himself over. Okay, so to be fair, I haven't invalidated anything that I've said. Everything I've said remains basically remains, the truth. It's just that there are some things that make intuitive sense to me that I find difficult to describe in English, in any sort of language besides mathematics, if that kind of makes sense, right? Right, exactly. Okay. So the central idea is really not that difficult. It's that because I am pushing against the air and the air is let's go back to helicopters. Because I'm pushing against the air and the air is pushing against me, if I push against the air harder, the air will push back harder against me, and therefore I will go up. And if I tilt the helicopter forwards a little, I am now pushing against the air downwards and to the right, and therefore the helicopter itself will go upwards and to the left, right? That's all there is to it. And of course, if you want to then sort of like shift the direction, you can engage in this rotor in the back, and that will push against the air, but in a lateral direction, and that will twist the helicopter, right? It will twist about sort of its center of gravity, which is over here. And that's why helicopters are inherently more dangerous than, say, an airplane, because they are vulnerable, but also they're much more maneuverable, but also more vulnerable because they you can imagine if something throws this off, right? It can make it dramatically more difficult. And I mean, we that's actually a good question. Yes, I'm responding to my oh, I need to scroll now. My girl whose name ends in AC. We will it'll be easier once we take some time to actually see this happening in Microsoft Flight Simulator. And yes, I will do this tomorrow because it sounds like fun. We can crash some helicopters tomorrow. Definitely. Yeah, why not? Why not? Let's do it. Anyway, that's it for today. No more questions because it's time to go because I have another meeting. Yeah, my boy's just right there smiling at me with that like that grin. Get that grin off your face, okay? Off your face. Anyway, so my next meeting is here. I'm going to go. Thank you for watching. In conclusion, please download Firefox. Please Chrome. I like how you're lip syncing along with me, and you're still not getting it correctly. That's it for today. Thank you. Oh yes, wink, wink. Let's do our right eye tomorrow. Not tomorrow. Today. 3, 2, 1, wink. Okay.